A maid saw the Mafia boss's son sharing one meal with her own child. She froze, waiting to be fired. Instead, the next morning, he handed her an envelope that made her knees buckle. What he asked for in return changed everything she thought she knew about Mercy, family, and the man everyone feared. The black SUV tore through the mountain road like a wounded animal fleeing hunters. Inside, Vittorio Leone pressed a blood-soaked cloth against his shoulder, his jaw clenched so tight his teeth ached. The ambush in Chicago had been swift and brutal, 3 of his men dead, 2 more critically wounded. Someone had sold him out. Someone close. "Boss, we need to get you to Dr. Castellano," his driver, Marcus, said for the 3rd time, eyes darting to the rear-view mirror. "No," Vittorio's voice was granite. "Home. Now." Marcus knew better than to argue. After 15 years of service, he understood that when Vittorio Leone made a decision, God himself couldn't change it. The estate appeared through the pine trees, a sprawling stone mansion that looked more like a medieval fortress than a home. Security gates opened automatically as cameras recognized the vehicle. It was 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. Vittorio wasn't supposed to return until Friday. The SUV screeched to a halt in the circular driveway. Vittorio pushed open the door before Marcus could help, ignoring the fresh wave of pain that shot through his shoulder. His black suit was torn at the sleeve, and blood had seeped through despite the makeshift bandaging. He must have looked like death walking. The front door burst open. Elena, the head housekeeper, appeared, her face draining of color. "Mr. Leone, you're hurt. We need to. Where's Adrian?" Vittorio cut her off, striding past her into the marble foyer. He's..." Elena stammered, clearly terrified. The staff knew that an injured Vittorio was a dangerous Vittorio. He should be finishing his afternoon lessons. But Vittorio was already moving through the house with the instinct of a predator tracking prey. Something felt off. The mansion was too quiet. Adrian's tutor, Mr. Brennan, was supposed to be drilling him on Latin conjugations in the East Wing study. Instead, Vittorio heard something that stopped him cold. Laughter. His son's laughter. The sound was so foreign, so unexpected, that for a moment Vittorio thought he'd imagined it. Adrian hadn't laughed, really laughed, in the 2 years since his mother's death. The boy had become a ghost in his own home, silent and hollow-eyed, picking at meals prepared by world-class chefs, refusing comfort from anyone. Vittorio followed the sound like a man in a trance. It led him through the servants' corridor, past the wine cellar, toward the kitchen, a part of the mansion he hadn't visited in months. The laughter grew louder, joined by other voices. Children's voices. He pushed through the swinging door. The scene before him made no sense. At the small wooden table in the corner of the industrial kitchen, 3 children sat hunched over mismatched plates. His son Adrian, 10 years old, wearing his school uniform with the tie loosened. Next to him, a boy maybe 7 or 8, dark-haired and thin, wearing clothes that had been washed so many times they'd gone gray. And standing behind them, setting down a pitcher of water, was a woman Vittorio barely recognized.
Marina.
One of the new maids hired 6 months ago. Young, maybe 28. Dark hair pulled back in a severe bun. The kind of woman who moved through the mansion like a shadow, never speaking unless spoken to, never meeting anyone's eyes. Right now, she was smiling. No, you have to fold it like this," Adrian was saying, demonstrating how to fold a piece of bread around a meatball. "Otherwise, all the sauce falls out. My mom taught me this when I was little." The casual mention of his dead mother would normally have sent Adrian into silent tears. Instead, the boy was grinning, tomato sauce on his chin, looking more alive than Vittorio had seen him in 2 years. The younger boy, Marina's son, Vittorio realized with a jolt, tried to copy Adrian's technique and failed spectacularly. The meatball rolled off his plate onto the table. All 3 of them burst into laughter. "Elias," Marina said, but she was laughing too, reaching over to rescue the runaway meatball. "What am I going to do with you?" "It's okay, Miss Marina," Adrian said quickly. Look, I'll show him again. It took me forever to learn too. Vittorio's hand throbbed where he was gripping the doorframe. Pain radiated from his shoulder, forgotten. He watched his son, his heir, his only remaining piece of his wife, carefully, patiently show this other boy how to eat a simple sandwich. Watched Adrian's face, open and unguarded, the way it used to be before grief had hollowed him out. Then Adrian did something that drove a knife straight through Vittorio's chest. With his thumb, Adrian gently wiped a smear of sauce from Elias's cheek. The gesture was tender, protective, brotherly. The kind of thing Adrian's mother used to do for him. Vittorio's vision blurred. For a moment, he wasn't standing in his kitchen watching his son. He was 7 years old again, sitting in a cramped apartment in Brooklyn, and his mother was wiping dirt from his face after he'd gotten into a fight with neighborhood boys. Her hands had been rough from cleaning other people's houses, but her touch had been gentle. "You're going to be strong, Vittorio," she'd whispered. "Stronger than your father. Stronger than all of them. But don't let it make you hard. Promise me." 3 months later, she was dead. Collateral damage in someone else's war. And Vittorio had broken that promise every day since. "Mr. Leone." Elena's panicked whisper snapped him back. She'd followed him, was now standing behind him, wringing her hands. "Sir, I didn't know. She wasn't supposed to. The boy is supposed to be in the servants' quarters during." Vittorio held up one hand. Elena's mouth snapped shut. He turned and walked away without a word, leaving Elena frozen in confusion. His shoulder screamed with every step, but he barely felt it. His mind was racing, calculating, processing what he'd just witnessed. He found James, the head butler, in the staff office reviewing inventory logs. "Tell me about Marina," Vittorio said quietly, closing the door behind him. James looked up, startled. He was 60, had served the Leone family for 30 years, and prided himself on his composure. But even he paled slightly at the blood on Vittorio's jacket. "Sir, you're injured."
"Tell me
"About."
Marina.
James set down his pen carefully.
Marina Castellano.
"Hired 6 months ago through the agency. References checked out. Age 27. Single mother. Son is 8 years old, Elias.
She's been
exemplary.
quiet.
Efficient. Never causes problems." Castellano, Vittorio's eyes narrowed. "Any relation to?" "We ran a background check, sir. The agency assured us." "I didn't ask what the agency assured you. I asked if there's a relation." James swallowed. "Her maiden name was Castellano. But there are thousands of Castellanos in New York, sir. It's a common. Her maiden name is still her current name." "Where's the father?" "Unknown. She was never married. The boy's birth certificate lists no father." Vittorio's mind clicked through possibilities like a gun chamber rotating.
Castellano.
6 months ago. Right around the time the DeMarco family had been absorbed into his organization after their leadership was wiped out in that warehouse fire. The same fire where Vincent Castellano, the DeMarco's consigliere, had burned alive with his 2 brothers. "Find out everything," Vittorio said, his voice deadly quiet. "Everything about her. Her family. Her history. Where she was before New York. Why she's here. I want it by tomorrow morning." "Of course, sir."
"And
should I have her removed from the premises?" Vittorio paused at the door. In his mind, he saw Adrian's face again. The smile. The laughter. The gentleness. "No," he said finally. "But have her report to my office at 8 a.m. sharp." "And James?" "Sir?" "No one tells her I saw anything today." "Understood?" "Perfectly, sir." Vittorio climbed the stairs to his private wing, finally allowing himself to acknowledge the pain. In his bathroom, he cleaned and bandaged the wound himself. It was only a graze. Looked worse than it was. He'd survived far worse. But as he stood in front of the mirror, stripped to the waist, looking at the tapestry of scars that told the story of his life, one question repeated in his mind like a mantra. Who was this woman that could make his son smile again? And why did that terrify him more than any ambush ever had? Vittorio didn't sleep that night. He sat in his study with a glass of bourbon he never drank, watching security footage on his laptop. The cameras covered every angle of the estate, except the kitchen. He'd never bothered installing one there. Why would he? It was just a kitchen. Now he regretted it. At 3 a.m., he finally closed the laptop and stared at the file James had left on his desk an hour earlier. Marina Castellano's entire life, condensed into 20 pages. He'd read it twice already. Now he read it a third time, looking for the lie he knew must be hidden somewhere in the truth. Born Marina Rose Castellano in Newark, New Jersey. Father, Vincent Castellano, deceased. Mother, Angela Castellano, deceased, lung cancer, 8 years ago.
No siblings.
High school dropout. Series of minimum wage jobs. Son born when she was 19. No marriage certificate, no father listed.
Vincent Castellano.
Consigliera to the DeMarco family. The man had been smart, careful, never directly involved in violence. But he'd been there, in that warehouse, when Vittorio's men had torched it 18 months ago. The DeMarcos had been moving against Leone territory. Vittorio had responded the only way the Mafia understood, with fire and blood. He'd never lost sleep over it before. The clock on his desk clicked to 7:55 a.m. Vittorio straightened his tie, buttoned his jacket, and became the man the world feared. By the time the knock came at exactly 8 a.m., his face was stone.
Come in.
Marina entered like she was walking to her execution. Her uniform was pressed and spotless, her hair pulled back tight enough to make her face look severe. But her hands were steady. She closed the door behind her and stood at attention, eyes fixed on a point just past his left shoulder.
Sit, Vittorio said.
She sat in the leather chair across from his desk, back straight, hands folded in her lap. The morning light from the window behind him cast her face in shadow.
Good.
He wanted to see her reactions without her seeing his. How long have you worked here? He asked. 6 months and 12 days, sir. And in that time, have you read the employee handbook? Yes, sir. Then you know the rules about family visits during work hours. A slight tightening around her eyes. Yes, sir. You know that staff children are not permitted in the main house. Yes, sir. You know that fraternizing with my son is strictly forbidden without explicit permission. Her jaw clenched. Yes, sir. Vittorio leaned back in his chair, letting the silence stretch. He'd interrogated hardened criminals who'd broken under this kind of pressure. Marina sat perfectly still, waiting. Yesterday afternoon, he continued, I returned home early. I found you in the kitchen with your son and mine, sharing a meal. Would you like to explain why you violated 3 separate rules? No excuse, sir. Her voice was flat, mechanical. It won't happen again. That's not what I asked. For the first time, her eyes flicked to his face, then away. I apologize, Mr. Leone. I'll accept whatever punishment you see fit. I didn't ask for an apology either. Vittorio leaned forward, elbows on the desk. I asked for an explanation. Marina's hands tightened in her lap. The silence stretched for 10 seconds.
20.
30. Then, quietly, your son was hungry. Vittorio's eyebrows rose a fraction. My son has a kitchen staff of 4. 3 meals a day, prepared by a chef who trained in Paris. I failed to see how hunger was an issue. Hungry, Marina repeated, and now there was an edge to her voice, small, but present. Not starving. Hungry. The way children get when they're, she stopped herself. When they're what? Her eyes met his fully for the first time. They were dark brown, almost black, and for a moment Vittorio saw something in them he recognized, the look of someone who'd lost everything and decided they had nothing left to fear. When they're lonely, she said. When they're so lonely that food tastes like dust and every meal is just another hour to survive. The words hit Vittorio like a physical blow. He kept his face neutral through sheer force of will. You're a maid, he said coldly. Not a therapist. I'm a mother. Now her voice was steel wrapped in silk. And I know a hurting child when I see one. You know nothing about my son. I know he hasn't eaten a full meal in front of your staff in 6 months, Marina said, the words tumbling out now like she'd been holding them back too long. I know he sits alone in that enormous dining room picking at food that costs more than my weekly salary. I know he's 10 years old, and he looks like a ghost. Enough, the word cracked like a whip. Marina's mouth snapped shut, but she didn't look away. Vittorio stood slowly, walking around the desk. He stopped 5 feet from her chair, close enough to be intimidating, far enough to maintain control. She didn't flinch. My son's well-being is none of your concern, he said quietly. Your job is to clean floors and change sheets. That's all. Do you understand? Yes, sir. If I find your son in my house again, then punish me. Marina stood abruptly, and Vittorio tensed. But she didn't move toward him. She simply stood there, trembling with controlled anger. Fire me. Throw me out. But don't punish them. They're just children who found each other in a house full of strangers. They didn't do anything wrong. I'll decide what's wrong in my house. Then decide. Her voice dropped to barely a whisper. But ask yourself this first. When was the last time you heard your son laugh? The question hung in the air like smoke. Vittorio stared at this woman, this maid, this nobody, this daughter of a dead man who'd burned in a warehouse, and felt something crack inside his chest. Something that had been frozen solid for 2 years. He couldn't answer her question. He couldn't remember.
Get out, he said.
Marina turned and walked to the door. Her hand was on the knob when Vittorio spoke again.
Marina.
She paused but didn't turn around. If I find out you have any agenda beyond doing your job, if I discover you're here for any reason other than honest work, there won't be anywhere you can hide. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Then we're done. For now. She left without another word. Vittorio returned to his desk and sat down heavily. His shoulder ached. His head ached. And somewhere in his chest, where his heart used to be, something was stirring. He pulled out his phone and sent a single text to Marcus, follow her. I want to know everywhere she goes, everyone she talks to. Report directly to me. Then he opened his laptop and pulled up the security footage from the hallway cameras. He watched Marina walk back toward the servants' quarters, her shoulders straight, her head high. Just before she turned the corner, she stopped, put her hand against the wall, and for just 3 seconds, she let her head drop, her shoulders shake. Then she straightened, took a breath, and disappeared from view. Vittorio closed the laptop. Who are you, Marina Castellano? He whispered to the empty room. The bourbon sat untouched on his desk, catching the morning light like liquid gold. 3 days passed. Vittorio watched from the shadows of his own house like a predator studying prey, except he didn't know anymore who was hunting whom. Marina moved through the mansion like water, silent and efficient. She scrubbed floors on her hands and knees, changed linens with military precision, polished silver until it gleamed. She spoke only when spoken to, never smiled, never looked up. The perfect servant. But Marcus's reports told a different story. Every afternoon at 2:30 p.m., during her break, Marina slipped into the servants' garden behind the kitchen. There, hidden by rose bushes and a crumbling stone wall, she'd open a small cooler and lay out a meal. 2 sandwiches, 2 apples, a thermos of soup, and like clockwork, 2 boys would appear. Adrian would finish his lessons early, suddenly gifted with a new motivation for academics, and ask Mr. Brennan for outdoor time. Elias would emerge from the quarters where staff families lived, drawn like a magnet. They'd sit with Marina on an old blanket, eating and talking and laughing. Vittorio watched from his second-floor balcony through binoculars, hating himself for it. On the 3rd day, Adrian brought a book, one of his favorites, about knights and dragons. He read aloud while Elias listened with wide eyes, stumbling over the bigger words. Marina would gently correct him, then Elias would repeat the words, committing them to memory. Your turn, Adrian said, handing the book to Elias. I can't read good, Elias mumbled, ducking his head. So? I'll teach you, Adrian's voice was matter-of-fact, patient. That's what friends do.
Friends.
The word echoed in Vittorio's mind. When had Adrian last had a friend? The sons of other Mafia families didn't visit. Too dangerous, too political. School was out of the question. Adrian existed in isolation, a prince in a tower, and Vittorio had convinced himself it was for the boy's protection. Now he wondered if he'd been protecting Adrian or just keeping him in a cage. That evening, Vittorio made his decision. He waited until 9 p.m., after Adrian was asleep, after most of the staff had retired. Then he went down to the servants' quarters, a wing of the estate he'd only visited twice in 15 years, both times to address security concerns. Marina's room was at the end of the hall, distinguished only by a small number plate. Vittorio knocked once. The door opened. Marina stood there in faded jeans and an old sweater, her hair down for the first time since he'd hired her. It fell past her shoulders in dark waves, softening her severe features. For a moment, she just stared at him, then her professionalism snapped back into place. Mr. Leone, she started to step back, to let him in. No. Vittorio glanced down the empty hallway. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. They walked in silence through the darkened mansion, their footsteps echoing on marble floors. Vittorio led her to the library, his sanctuary, the one room where he could think clearly. He closed the door and gestured to a chair. Marina remained standing. I've been watching you, Vittorio said bluntly. I know, her voice was steady. That surprised him. You knew. I've been watched my entire life, Mr. Leone. You learned to feel it, she met his eyes. Your man Marcus isn't as subtle as he thinks. Vittorio almost smiled. Almost. And yet you continued to break the rules. Yes. Why? Marina was quiet for a long moment. Then she walked to the window overlooking the garden, the same garden where she fed the boys every afternoon. Do you know what it's like to watch your child starve for connection? Not food connection. To see him so desperate for a friend that he'll befriend anyone, even the son of... She stopped herself. Even the son of a monster? Vittorio finished coldly. Marina turned to face him. I was going to say, even the son of a stranger, but if you want to call yourself a monster, that's your choice. The boldness of it should have enraged him. Instead, Vittorio found himself curious. You're not afraid of me. I'm terrified of you. The admission was simple, honest. But I'm more afraid of what happens to my son if I let fear stop me from giving him a chance at childhood. Even a stolen 1 inch. Vittorio moved closer, studying her face in the dim light. Do you know who I am? What I do? I know enough. Do you know what I did to the DeMarco family? Marina flinched, barely, just a tightening around her eyes. But Vittorio caught it. I know, she whispered. And yet you're here, working in my house. Let me ask you something, Marina. Is it justice you're after? Revenge? Are you waiting for the perfect moment to put a knife in my back?
No.
Then why? He was close enough now to see the faint scar above her left eyebrow, the dark circles under her eyes from exhaustion. Why come here of all places? Marina's laugh was bitter, broken. You think I had a choice? You think anyone in this city will hire Vincent Castellano's daughter? Your war didn't just kill my father, Mr. Leone. It killed my name. Every door is closed. Every opportunity is gone. I take degrading work in the house of the man who destroyed my family because it's the only work I can get. Because my son needs to eat. Because I have nowhere else to go. The raw honesty of it hit Vittorio like a punch. He'd never considered the aftermath. The widows, the orphans, the survivors who carried on in the wreckage of his wars. Your father made his choices, Vittorio said, but the words felt hollow even to him. And I'm paying for them, Marina's voice cracked. Every single day, I'm paying for them. But my son? He's innocent. Adrian is innocent. And I won't apologize for giving them 1 hour a day where they can forget that the world is cruel and cold and that men like you and my father exist. The words hung between them like a blade. Vittorio should have fired her on the spot. Should have thrown her out, severed this connection, eliminated the risk. But he thought of Adrian's laugh. Adrian's smile. Adrian wiping sauce from Elias's cheek with the gentleness his mother had once shown him. Tomorrow afternoon, Vittorio said quietly, when you have your break, do it in the East Garden instead. The one near the fountain. Better shade. More privacy. Marina stared at him, confused. I'm not giving permission, Vittorio continued, his voice hard. I'm simply pointing out that if you're going to break rules, you should at least be smart about it. The servants' garden is visible from 3 security stations. The East Garden is only visible from my office. Understanding dawned in Marina's eyes, followed by something that looked dangerously close to hope. Don't mistake this for kindness, Vittorio warned. I'm still watching you. One wrong move, one hint that you're anything other than what you claim, and you're gone. Both of you. I understand. Do you? Vittorio moved toward the door, then paused. You saved nothing, Marina. You're here because I allow it. Your son breathes because I permit it. Don't ever forget that. He left before she could respond, walking back through his mansion with footsteps that echoed like gunshots. But in his office, alone with his bourbon and his ghosts, Vittorio pulled up the security camera for the East Garden and watched the empty fountain catch moonlight. And he wondered what the hell he was doing. The East Garden became sacred ground. Every afternoon at 2:30 p.m. sharp, Marina would spread her blanket near the marble fountain where stone angels poured water from urns. The boys would arrive within minutes. Adrian from his lessons, Elias from the servants' quarters, and for 1 hour, the world would shrink to just the 3 of them. Vittorio watched from his office window like a man possessed. He told himself it was security.
Due diligence.
Protecting his heir from potential threats. But the truth sat heavier in his chest with each passing day. He was watching his son come back to life, and he couldn't look away. The changes started small. On day 4, Adrian asked his tutor, Mr. Brennan, a question. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to know the answer. Brennan nearly dropped his chalk in shock. Adrian hadn't voluntarily engaged in 6 months. He asked about Roman engineering. Brennan reported to Vittorio that evening, his elderly face lit with cautious optimism, specifically about aqueducts. He wanted to know how they moved water uphill. I haven't seen him this curious since before. Since his mother died. The words hung unspoken. On day 7, Adrian smiled at breakfast. Not the polite, empty smile he'd learned to wear like armor, but a real smile, quick and genuine, when Elena served his favorite pastries. The housekeeper actually teared up. On day 10, Adrian spoke at dinner. Vittorio had been cutting his steak, reviewing mental notes about a shipment problem in Newark, when Adrian's voice cut through the silence of the cavernous dining room. Dad. The fork froze halfway to Vittorio's mouth. Adrian never initiated conversation. Never. Yes. Vittorio kept his voice neutral, careful not to spook this fragile moment. Mr. Brennan says the Romans built roads that lasted thousands of years.
Could we
maybe visit some? Like in a book. It was the longest sentence Adrian had spoken directly to him in months. Vittorio felt something shift in his chest, like ice cracking. Perhaps, he said carefully, when it's safe to travel. Adrian nodded and returned to his food, but there was a lightness to him that hadn't been there before. He actually cleaned his plate, the first full meal he'd eaten in the dining room since his mother's funeral. That night, Vittorio stood outside Adrian's bedroom door, listening to his son sleep.
No nightmares. No crying.
Just peaceful silence. The next afternoon, Vittorio made a decision that went against every instinct of self-preservation he'd honed over 40 years. He went to the garden. Not to interrupt, he stayed back, hidden by a hedge of roses 20 feet from the fountain. Close enough to hear their voices, but far enough that they wouldn't notice him. Marina was teaching both boys how to make paper airplanes from napkins. No, fold it this way first, she was saying, her hands guiding Elias's smaller ones.
See?
The sharper the nose, the faster it flies. like a fighter jet. Elias's enthusiasm was infectious. Adrian folded his napkin with focused precision, his tongue poking out slightly, the same expression his mother had when she concentrated. When he finished, he held it up proudly. "Look, Ms. Marina. Is this right?" "Perfect." Marina's smile was warm, genuine. "Now, let's see whose flies furthest." They launched their planes simultaneously. Adrian sailed in a graceful arc, landing near the fountain. Elias's nosedived immediately, crashing into the grass. Marina's split the difference. "I win." Adrian laughed, pumping his fist. "No fair, you're older." Elias protested, but he was grinning. "Then I'll teach you my secret technique," Adrian said, already reaching for another napkin. "Come on, I'll show you." Vittorio watched his son, patient, kind, engaged, and barely recognized him. This wasn't the hollow ghost who'd haunted the mansion for 2 years. This was the boy Adrian had been before grief had swallowed him whole. "Adrian," Marina said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "You're always so good to Elias. So patient."
Why?
Adrian was quiet for a moment, folding another plane with careful attention. "My mom used to say that being kind doesn't cost anything." And he hesitated. "Elias reminds me that I'm not the only kid who's sad sometimes. It makes me feel less alone." Marina's eyes glistened. She reached over and squeezed Adrian's shoulder. "Your mother was right, and she'd be very proud of you." Adrian's face crumpled for just a second, a flash of pain. Then he took a shaky breath and smiled. "Thanks, Ms. Marina. Race you to the fountain." Elias suddenly shouted, taking off at a sprint. "Hey, no head starts." Adrian laughed, chasing after him. Marina stayed on the blanket, watching them run circles around the fountain, their laughter echoing off the stone walls. Her expression was soft, unguarded, and desperately sad. Vittorio understood in that moment that Marina wasn't just giving the boys friendship. She was giving them normalcy, childhood, the thing both of them had lost to circumstances beyond their control. He turned to leave, to return to his office before they noticed him, when he heard Marina's voice, barely a whisper.
"I'm sorry, Vincent."
"I'm sorry I couldn't protect your grandson from this life. But I'll protect him, the only way I can now." She was talking to her dead father. To a ghost. Vittorio's hand clenched into a fist.
Vincent Castellano.
The man had died screaming in that warehouse, trapped behind a door Vittorio's men had chained shut. Quick, they'd told him. No one suffered. They'd lied. Or he'd chosen to believe the lie. That evening, Adrian came to Vittorio's study, another first. He knocked politely and entered when called, standing with his hands behind his back. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why don't we ever have anyone over?"
Like
"Kids my age." The question was innocent, but it landed like a grenade. "It's complicated, Adrian. Security concerns." "But we have security everywhere," Adrian pressed, a hint of his old stubbornness returning. "We have guards and cameras and everything. Mom used to have people over all the time. Remember? She'd have tea parties and I could invite friends from." "Your mother is gone." The words came out harsher than Vittorio intended. Adrian flinched, but didn't back down. "I know. I miss her every day. But she wouldn't want us to live like this. Like we're in prison. You don't understand the dangers." "Then explain them to me." Adrian's voice cracked with frustration. "I'm not a baby anymore, Dad.
I'm 10.
And I'm so tired of being alone." The raw honesty of it broke something in Vittorio. He looked at his son, really looked at him, and saw not the heir he was trying to mold, but the lonely child he'd been neglecting. "Come here," Vittorio said quietly. Adrian approached cautiously. Vittorio put a hand on his shoulder, feeling how thin the boy had become, how fragile. "You're right," Vittorio admitted. "I've been protecting you the wrong way. Your mother would have my head for it." Adrian's eyes widened. Vittorio never talked about his wife. Never. "I'll think about it," Vittorio continued. "About ways to make things better." Safer, but better. Can you give me time? Adrian nodded slowly. Okay. Thanks, Dad. After Adrian left, Vittorio sat in the darkening study and made a call. Marcus, I need deep background on Marina Castellano. Everything. Not just her father, her whole family tree, every connection, every debt. And Marcus? I need to know if she's telling the truth about why she's here. You don't trust her, boss? Vittorio looked out at the east garden, where the fountain caught the last light of sunset. I don't trust anyone, he said. But I need to know if I should. He hung up and poured himself that bourbon he'd been avoiding for days. This time, he drank it. The report arrived at 2 a.m. in a sealed envelope. Vittorio sat in his study under a single lamp, the house silent around him, and read Marina's life story, written in clinical detail. It was worse than he'd thought. Vincent Castellano had left his daughter nothing but debts and enemies. After the warehouse fire, Marina had been evicted from her apartment. The landlord didn't want mob connections in his building. She'd lost her job at a diner when customers recognized her name from newspaper articles. Banks refused her accounts. Landlords refused her applications. For 6 months, she and Elias had lived in her car. Vittorio stared at the sentence, reading it 3 times. His son's friend, the boy Adrian was teaching to read, the boy who laughed at paper airplanes, had slept in a car. In winter. The medical records were worse. Elias had a degenerative kidney condition, treatable with proper care but fatal without it. The free clinic had diagnosed him 8 months ago. Marina had been taking him to charity hospitals, but they kept turning her away. Not enough resources. Come back next month. Your case isn't critical yet.
Yet.
The word sat in Vittorio's mind like poison. At the bottom of the report, Marcus had attached a note in his cramped handwriting. Boss, she's been selling her blood plasma twice a week to pay for the kids' medications. The prescription costs $340 a month. She makes $400 here. Do the math. Vittorio did the math. Rent for the servants' quarters was deducted from her pay. Food, utilities, everything. She was living on $60 a month, and half of that went to things for Elias. He closed the folder and sat in the darkness for a long time. At 11 p.m. the next evening, Vittorio found himself wandering the mansion, restless and unable to sleep. His shoulder ached, a phantom pain from the healed wound. He walked without destination, just moving through the silent halls like a ghost in his own home. Light spilled from under the laundry room door.
Vittorio paused.
The laundry room was locked at night. He moved silently closer and eased the door open a crack. Marina sat on the floor under the harsh fluorescent lights, surrounded by Elias's clothes. She was hand-sewing a patch onto a pair of jeans, so worn they were nearly transparent. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, in and out, the needle catching the light. Next to her sat a pair of small sneakers, Elias's only pair. The sole had separated from the left shoe. Marina had glued it back together with what looked like industrial adhesive from the maintenance closet, and now she was reinforcing it with wire from a coat hanger, threading it through holes she'd punched in the rubber. She worked in complete silence, her face blank with exhaustion. Vittorio pushed the door open fully. It's almost midnight. Marina's head snapped up, her hand clutching the needle like a weapon. When she recognized him, she immediately stood, dropping the jeans. Mr. Leone. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'll clean up. Sit down. She hesitated, then slowly sank back to the floor. Vittorio stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. He looked at the pile of mended clothes, the Frankenstein sneakers, the needle and thread. Why are you really here? He asked bluntly. Marina's hands clenched in her lap. I told you. I needed work. No, Vittorio moved closer, towering over her. Why are you here in my house? You could have left New York, changed your name, disappeared. And gone where? Her voice was sharp with bitterness. With what money? With what references? With a sick child who needs specialists and medications and… She stopped, pressing her lips together. Your son is sick. It wasn't a question, but Marina reacted like he'd slapped her. Her face went white. How did you? I know everything that happens under my roof. Vittorio picked up the sneakers, examining the makeshift repair. Degenerative kidney disease. Treatable, according to the medical reports. So why isn't he being treated? Marina stood abruptly, anger flashing in her eyes. Because hospitals refuse us. Because my father's name is on every database, every blacklist. Because the moment they see Castellano, they remember the news articles and the trials and her voice cracked. They remember the warehouse. They remember that my father worked for the DeMarcos. And suddenly there are no appointments available. No specialists taking new patients. No charity care for the daughter of a dead criminal. That's illegal. Medical discrimination is hard to prove when they just say they're full. Marina laughed, but it was hollow. You think I haven't tried? You think I haven't begged? I've knelt in hospital hallways. I've written letters to every doctor in 3 states. Nothing. Because my father's sins are mine now. Because your war didn't just kill him. It killed any chance my son had for a normal life. The accusation hung between them, raw and undeniable. Vittorio set down the sneakers carefully. How long does he have? What? Without treatment. How long? Marina's face crumpled. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly looking much younger than 27. They don't know. Maybe a year. Maybe 5. Every infection risks his remaining kidney. Every cold could become something worse. I'm watching my son die in slow motion, and there's nothing I can do except work in the house of the man who... She stopped herself, but the words hung in the air anyway. The man who killed my father. Why don't you hate me? Vittorio asked quietly. Marina looked at him with eyes that had seen too much.
Ida.
Every day I wake up and I hate you. I hate that my son plays with your son. I hate that I clean your floors and wash your sheets and serve your food. I hate that I'm grateful for this job when I should burn this house down with you in it. The honesty was brutal, refreshing. But, she continued, her voice breaking, Elias doesn't know any of that. He just knows Adrian is his friend. He just knows that for 1 hour every day, he gets to be a normal kid. And I won't take that from him. I won't poison him with my hate. He deserves better than that. Vittorio stood there, this woman's words cutting deeper than any knife ever had. He thought of Adrian, laughing in the garden. He thought of Elias, sleeping peacefully in the servants' quarters, unaware that his body was betraying him. He thought of his own mother, working herself to death to give him a chance at life, only to die in someone else's war. Get his medical records, Vittorio said finally. Marina stared at him. What? His complete medical history. Diagnosis, specialist recommendations, everything. Get it to me by tomorrow evening.
Why?
What are you going to? Just do it. Vittorio turned to leave, then paused at the door. And Marina? Stop using industrial glue on children's shoes. There's a cobbler in the city. Send James the receipt. I'll authorize it. He left before she could respond, walking back through his mansion with footsteps that no longer echoed quite so hollow. In his study, he made 3 phone calls. The first to his personal physician, Dr. Castellano, no relation to Marina, just the irony of a common name. The second to his lawyer. The third to a man in Boston who owed him a favor and ran the best pediatric nephrology program on the East Coast. By dawn, Vittorio had made arrangements that would either save a life or destroy whatever remained of his hardened heart. He wasn't sure which terrified him more. The attack came on a Tuesday morning when Vittorio was 70 miles away in Manhattan, negotiating a truce with the Salvatore family over disputed territory in Queens. Later, he would realize the timing wasn't coincidental. It started at 6:47 a.m., 15 minutes before the main security shift change, the only window when the estate had minimal coverage. 4 men in black tactical gear breached the perimeter at the northeast corner, where the wall was oldest, using climbing equipment and wire cutters. They knew exactly where the cameras were. They knew exactly where the guards would be. Someone had given them a map. Marco, the head of security, was making his morning rounds when he spotted movement near the servants' entrance. He reached for his radio and took 3 bullets to the chest before he could speak. The suppressed gunfire was nearly silent, just soft coughs that wouldn't wake anyone sleeping. But Elena was already awake, preparing breakfast in the kitchen. She heard something, a crash, maybe footsteps, and looked out the window in time to see Marco's body hit the ground. She screamed. The sound echoed through the mansion like a siren, waking everyone instantly. In the servants' quarters, Marina jolted awake, her combat instincts from a childhood in a mob family snapping into place. She heard gunfire. Real gunfire now, no longer suppressed, and shouting from the main house. Elias. She ran to her son's small bedroom. He was sitting up, terrified.
Get up now. Shoes on.
Don't ask questions. Adrian's room was in the east wing, separated from Marina by 2 hallways and a locked door she didn't have keys for. But she knew the mansion's layout. 6 months of cleaning every room had mapped it in her mind. She grabbed Elias's hand and ran. The gunmen had split up. 2 were systematically moving through the main floor, eliminating guards. 2 had gone straight upstairs toward the family wing. Toward Adrian. Marina heard them, boots on marble, military precision. She yanked Elias into a service corridor, the narrow passages staff used to move invisibly through the house. Her heart hammered as she calculated angles, distances, time. Adrian's regular security, Thomas, appeared at the end of the corridor, herding Adrian in front of him. The boy was in his pajamas, face white with terror.
Marina.
Thomas shouted. Get back. Take your kid to the safe. The bullet hit him in the shoulder, spinning him around. He went down hard, his gun skittering across the floor. Adrian screamed. Marina didn't think. She ran forward, grabbed Adrian's arm with her free hand, and dragged both boys toward the kitchen. It was the only room she knew had multiple exits and thick walls. Behind them, footsteps pounded closer. They burst into the kitchen. Elena and 2 other staff members were there, frozen with fear by the industrial ovens. The pantry.
Marina yelled.
Everyone now. The pantry was a walk-in room, 12 by 12, with reinforced walls because it had once been a cold storage vault. Marina shoved the staff inside, then pushed both boys after them. Miss Marina, what's happening? Elias was crying, clutching Adrian. Stay quiet. Stay down. Don't open this door for anyone but me or Mr. Leone's security. Marina started to close the door. Adrian grabbed her wrist. Where are you going? To lock the other entrances. I'll be right back.
No.
Adrian's grip tightened, his young face fierce with sudden understanding. You can't leave us. Marina knelt quickly, meeting his eyes. Adrian, listen to me. Your father would die if anything happened to you. So I need you to be brave.
Can you do that?
Adrian nodded, tears streaming down his face. Marina kissed his forehead, an instinct she didn't question, then pushed him back and slammed the pantry door. She dragged a steel baker's rack in front of it, then another. It wouldn't stop anyone determined, but it would slow them down. The kitchen door exploded inward. 2 men in tactical gear swept in, rifles raised. They saw Marina immediately, a woman in pajamas, unarmed, clearly staff. Where's the Leone kid? The first one demanded. Marina's mind raced. They wanted Adrian. Just Adrian. Which meant this wasn't random violence, this was an assassination. Upstairs, she said, forcing her voice to shake. In his room. Please don't hurt me. I'm just. Clear the kitchen, the first man said to his partner. I'll check upstairs. The second man moved toward the pantry. Marina saw the blade block on the counter, chef's knives, professional grade. She calculated the distance.
4 feet.
The man was armed, trained, probably expecting resistance. She was a 27-year-old maid who weighed 120 pounds. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. In a fight you can't win, don't fight fair. The man reached the pantry, saw the barricade, understood immediately. "They're in here. I got." Marina grabbed the largest knife and drove it into his lower back, below the tactical vest, angling upward toward his kidney. It wasn't a killing blow. She wasn't strong enough, didn't have the angle, but it was enough. He roared in pain, spinning around. His rifle swung toward her. Marina ducked, and the burst of gunfire shredded the cabinets above her head. She rolled behind the industrial island, heart hammering, knowing she had seconds before he recovered. The kitchen door burst open again. But this time it was guards, real ones, Leon's men, finally responding to the breach. They saw their teammate down, saw the armed intruder, and opened fire. The gunman went down in a hail of bullets. Marina stayed behind the island, hands shaking, the bloody knife still clutched in her fist. She heard shouting, more gunfire from other parts of the mansion, commands being barked into radios. Then silence. "Clear," someone shouted. Marina stood on trembling legs. The head guard, Vincent, spotted her. His eyes went wide at the knife in her hand, the blood on her pajamas. "The boys," she gasped. "In the pantry. They're safe." Vincent spoke rapidly into his radio while two guards moved the barricade. The pantry door opened and children poured out. Elias first, launching himself at Marina, then Adrian, white-faced but alive. Adrian looked at the dead man on the floor, at the blood, at Marina still holding the knife. His eyes went very wide. "You saved us," he whispered. Marina dropped the knife and fell to her knees, pulling both boys into her arms. "You're okay. You're both okay. That's all that matters." Vincent was already on the phone. "Sir, we have a breach situation. Multiple hostiles down. Your son is safe." "But sir," he paused, listening. "Yes, sir."
She did.
"The maid, Marina."
She.
"Yes, sir." She protected them. Outside, helicopter rotors beat the air like war drums. Vittorio was coming home. The helicopter touched down on the east lawn at 7:32 a.m., barely 20 minutes after Vincent's call. It hadn't fully landed before Vittorio jumped out, gun drawn, face carved from stone. Marcus and 4 armed men flanked him as he strode toward the mansion. Bodies lay in the courtyard, 3 attackers, 2 of his guards. Vittorio's jaw clenched tighter with each corpse he passed. "Report," he snapped at Vincent, who met him at the entrance. 4 hostiles breached at 6:47. All dead. We lost Marco and Tony. 3 others wounded, none critical. The boy is. Where is my son? Kitchen, sir. Unharmed. Vittorio moved through his mansion like a force of nature, guards scrambling to keep up. The damage was evident. Bullet holes in walls, shattered windows, blood smeared on marble floors. His home had become a war zone. He burst through the kitchen doors. Adrian sat at the small staff table, wrapped in a blanket, Elena hovering nearby with hot chocolate. Next to him, also wrapped in a blanket, was Elias. Both boys looked up when Vittorio entered. Adrian's face crumpled. "Dad." The boy launched himself at Vittorio, who caught him automatically, his gun still in one hand. Adrian buried his face in Vittorio's shoulder and started sobbing, huge, gasping sobs that shook his small frame. "I was so scared," Adrian choked out. "They had guns and Thomas got shot, and Ms. Marina." "Where is she?" Vittorio's voice was deadly quiet. "Here, sir." Marina stood in the pantry doorway, still in blood-stained pajamas, Elias clutching her hand. Her face was pale but composed, her dark eyes meeting Vittorio's without flinching. Vittorio's gaze swept over her, the blood, the defensive stance, the way she'd positioned herself between Elias and the room. Then he looked past her into the pantry and saw the barricade, the defensive position, the knife still lying on the floor in a pool of blood. "Sir," Vincent said quietly, "she killed one of them. Stabbed him when he found where she'd hidden the kids. Saved your son's life." Vittorio stared at Marina. This woman, this maid, this daughter of an enemy, This person he'd threatened and watched and suspected had stood between his son and armed killers.
Everyone out, Vittorio said.
Sir, the interrogation.
Out. Now.
The staff fled. Marcus hesitated, but a look from Vittorio sent him out as well. Only Marina remained, still holding Elias, still standing in that doorway like a sentinel. Adrian pulled back from Vittorio's shoulder. Dad, don't be mad at Ms. Marina. She saved us. She was so brave. Adrian, Vittorio's voice was gentler than anyone had heard it in years. Go with Elena. Take Elias. Get cleaned up, both of you. But now, son. Adrian reluctantly let go. He walked to Marina, who released Elias's hand so the boys could leave together. As they passed, Adrian looked back at Marina with something like worship in his eyes. The door closed. Silence filled the kitchen. Vittorio set his gun on the counter and walked slowly toward Marina. She didn't move, didn't flinch, just watched him approach with those dark, unflinching eyes. He stopped 3 feet away. You could have hidden, locked the pantry from inside, and waited for my men. The door locks from the outside, Marina said simply. And they would have found it eventually. So, you decided to fight. A trained killer.
Armed.
Twice your size. I decided he wouldn't get to those children. Everything else was negotiable. Vittorio's hand shot out, grabbing her arm. Marina tensed, but didn't pull away. He turned her arm over, revealing bruises already forming where the dead man had struck her. Her knuckles were split, bloodied. You're hurt, he said.
Fine.
You're not. Vittorio released her arm and stepped back, running a hand through his hair. For the first time in 20 years, he felt unmoored, adrift. Do you understand what you did? You killed a man. For my son. For both of them, Marina corrected quietly. For 2 children who deserve to wake up this morning. That's all. That's all. Vittorio's voice rose. You threw yourself at an armed intruder. You could have died. Your son could have lost his mother. For what? For a boy whose father destroyed your family? Marina's composure finally cracked. Because he's just a boy. Because Adrian didn't burn down that warehouse. He didn't kill my father. He's an innocent child who's already lost his mother, and I'll be damned if I let him lose his life, too, just because adults can't stop destroying each other. The words echoed in the kitchen like a slap. Vittorio stared at her, this woman who made no sense, who should hate him, who had every reason to let his son die, who instead had picked up a knife and fought like a lioness protecting her cubs. Why, he asked, the question barely a whisper. Why save him? Marina's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Because when I look at Adrian, I don't see your son. I see my son. I see every child who's been caught in the crossfire of wars they didn't start. I see. Her voice broke. I see the boy my father used to be, before this life poisoned him. And maybe if someone had protected that boy, my father wouldn't have become the man who died in your warehouse. The honesty of it drove the air from Vittorio's lungs. He turned away, gripping the edge of the counter until his knuckles went white. Behind him, he heard Marina's shaky breath, heard her trying to compose herself. Sir, Vincent's voice crackled through the radio on Vittorio's belt. We've got one alive. In the wine cellar. Waiting for your orders. Vittorio picked up the radio. I'm coming. He walked to the door, then paused without turning around.
Marina.
Yes. Thank you. The words felt foreign in his mouth and used. For my son. Thank you. He left before she could respond. In the wine cellar, the captured attacker sat zip-tied to a chair, bleeding from a shoulder wound. Vittorio's men had removed his mask, revealing a face Vittorio didn't recognize. Late 30s, military bearing, probably former special forces turned mercenary. Vittorio pulled up a chair and sat facing him. I'm going to ask you questions, Vittorio said calmly. You're going to answer them. If you lie, Marcus here will start removing fingers. If you tell the truth, you'll die quickly. Those are your options. Not if you understand. The man nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. Who sent you? The man hesitated. Marcus pulled out a pair of bolt cutters. Rinaldi, the man gasped.
Consigliere Rinaldi.
He hired us. Said the hit had to look like outside work. Said the woman and her kid were security risks, needed to be eliminated too. The room went very, very cold. Vittorio's second in command. His most trusted advisor for 8 years. The man who sat in every meeting, who knew every secret, who had access to everything.
Why?
Vittorio's voice could have cut glass. He's been talking to the feds. Witness protection deal. Said he needed leverage, needed to prove he could deliver you. Said killing your kid would force you into the open, make you sloppy. Marcus swore viciously. The other guards shifted, hands moving to weapons. Vittorio sat perfectly still, processing this betrayal. Then, very calmly, he stood. Where is Rinaldi now? I don't know, I swear. He set this up, said he'd be in Boston for. Vittorio pulled his gun and shot the man once, clean through the forehead. The body slumped. Silence filled the cellar. Find Rinaldi, Vittorio said, his voice empty of emotion. I don't care where he is or who he's with. Find him and bring him to the docks. I want him alive. Yes, sir. Vittorio holstered his gun and walked back upstairs, through his damaged mansion, past the bodies being removed by his men. He found Adrian and Elias in the East Garden, both boys cleaned up now, sitting on Marina's blanket under the fountain. Marina sat between them, an arm around each, all three of them silent and shell-shocked. Vittorio stood at the garden entrance, watching. Adrian's head rested on Marina's shoulder. Elias held her hand. And Marina, this impossible, infuriating, brave woman, held both boys like they were hers to protect. His son hadn't run to his guards, hadn't run to his security team or his father's men. He'd run to the maid. And Vittorio realized, standing there in the morning light with the smell of gunpowder still in the air, that somewhere along the way, without his permission or knowledge, Marina had become part of his family. The thought terrified him more than any attack ever could. They found Rinaldi in a safe house in Providence, Rhode Island, 48 hours after the attack. He was packing a go bag, preparing to disappear into federal protection. He never got the chance. Marcus and 3 men kicked in the door at 3 a.m. Rinaldi reached for his gun and took a taser to the chest. By dawn, he was zip-tied in the back of a van, heading south toward the Connecticut coast. Vittorio waited at the old shipping dock, the same one where his father had conducted business 30 years ago, where bodies were weighted with chains and dropped into water deep enough to hide secrets forever. The van arrived at 6:17 a.m., just as the sun was breaking over the Atlantic. Marcus dragged Rinaldi out, still groggy from the taser, and threw him to his knees on the weathered planks. Rinaldi looked up at Vittorio and had the audacity to smile.
Vittorio.
I was wondering when you'd figure it out. Vittorio lit a cigarette, taking his time. The morning was cold, mist rising off the water. Seagulls cried overhead, oblivious to the violence about to unfold. 8 years, Vittorio said quietly. 8 years you sat at my right hand. Every decision, every deal, every secret. I trusted you. Trust, Rinaldi spat blood. You want to talk about trust? You've been getting soft, Vittorio. Ever since your wife died. Ever since that maid showed up with her bastard kid. I saw what was happening. You were losing focus. Becoming weak. So, you decided to kill my son. I decided to eliminate a liability. Rinaldi's voice rose, desperate now. That woman is Vincent Castellano's daughter. Her father worked for the DeMarcos. She's probably been feeding information to rival families since day one. Her son is a risk. I was protecting you, protecting the family. By murdering a 10-year-old boy? Vittorio's voice was ice. By cutting out the cancer before it spreads. Rinaldi struggled against his bonds. You can't see it because you're blinded by sentiment. But I saw the truth. She's dangerous. She's infiltrated your home, gotten close to your heir, and you've let her because you're too busy playing Father of the Year too. Marcus hit him.
Hard.
Rinaldi's head snapped back, blood spraying from his split lip. Boss, let me, Marcus began. Vittorio held up one hand.
No.
I want to hear this. Tell me, Rinaldi, what information has Marina passed? What secrets has she sold? Rinaldi glared at him. I don't know yet, but she will. That's what they do. They wait, they watch, they strike when you're vulnerable. You don't know. Vittorio crouched down, eye level with his former consigliere. You ordered a hit on my son based on a suspicion. Based on paranoia. Based on protecting you from yourself. Rinaldi's desperation was palpable now. Can't you see? She's playing you. The starving child, the dead father, the noble suffering. It's an act. She's working an angle, and you're too blind to. She killed for him. Vittorio's voice was soft, deadly. When your hired killers came for my son, she didn't run. She didn't hide. She picked up a knife and stood between them and the children. Does that sound like someone working an angle? For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Rinaldi's face. That doesn't mean. And while she was protecting my heir, Vittorio continued, standing. You were in Boston meeting with FBI agents. Selling information. Trading our family's secrets for immunity. Marcus found the wire transfers. Found your communications. Found everything. Rinaldi's face went pale. Vittorio, listen to me. I'm done listening. Vittorio drew his gun. You want to know the difference between you and Marina? She killed to protect children. You were willing to murder them to cover your own betrayal. You were willing to let my son die so you could save yourself. Wait. Rinaldi's composure shattered completely. I can fix this. I haven't given them anything important yet. I can feed them false information. I can... Tell me one thing, Vittorio interrupted. Did my son smile because of you? What? In the 2 years since his mother died, did you ever make Adrian smile? Did you ever give him a moment of happiness? Did you ever do anything except use him as leverage for your own power? Rinaldi opened his mouth, closed it. No answer came. Marina did. Vittorio's voice was conversational now, which made it more terrifying. A woman with every reason to hate me gave my son back his childhood. She asked for nothing, expected nothing, just fed him lunch and let him be a boy again. And you wanted to kill her for it. Vittorio, please. What did the feds promise you? Witness protection? New identity? Freedom? Rinaldi nodded frantically. Yes. A house in Arizona. New name. Clean slate. I can still. Did they promise you peace? Vittorio asked. Did they promise you'd sleep at night without seeing the faces of the people you betrayed? I was protecting the family. You were protecting yourself. Vittorio's finger moved to the trigger. And you failed. Wait. Just tell me one thing. Why her? Why does some maid matter more than 8 years of loyal service? Vittorio was quiet for a long moment, the gun steady in his hand. When he spoke, his voice was distant, almost sad. Because when my son had nightmares, you told me to hire better therapists. Marina sat with him until he fell asleep. Because when Adrian stopped eating, you said to force-feed him if necessary. Marina taught him that food could be shared with friends. Because when my boy was dying inside, you saw a problem to be managed. She saw a child to be loved. He raised the gun. And because she reminded me of something I'd forgotten, that being strong doesn't mean being heartless. My mother taught me that. My wife believed it. And Marina lives it every day, despite everything I've taken from her. Vittorio. You asked why she matters more than you? Vittorio's eyes were cold, empty. Because she has honor. And you never did. The shot echoed across the water. Rinaldi's body slumped forward. Marcus, clean this up. Make it disappear. Yes, boss. Vittorio walked back to his car, holstering the gun. The sun was fully up now, burning off the mist. It should have felt like victory. A traitor eliminated, his son safe, order restored. Instead, he felt hollow. He drove back to the estate in silence, his mind churning. Rinaldi's words kept echoing. She's playing you. She's working an angle.
Was she?
Or had Vittorio become so corrupt, so hardened, that he couldn't recognize genuine kindness anymore? Had he spent so long in darkness that he'd forgotten what light looked like? He arrived home to find the estate in full lockdown. New guards, new protocols, new security measures. His house had become a fortress again. But in the east garden, visible from the driveway, he saw Adrian and Elias tossing a ball back and forth. Marina sat on her blanket, watching them, a small smile on her face despite the bandages on her hands. Adrian's laughter carried on the wind. Vittorio sat in his car for 5 minutes, just watching his son play, watching Marina protect them with her presence even now, watching two boys who should have been enemies become brothers. Finally, he got out and walked to his office. He had calls to make, arrangements to complete, orders to give that would change everything. But first, he opened his laptop and pulled up Marina's medical records. Elias's diagnosis, the specialist reports, the treatment plans that had been denied. He picked up the phone and dialed. Dr. Castellano? It's Vittorio Leone. I need your team to examine a patient.
No, not me. A child.
8 years old. Kidney disease. I'm sending you the files now. He paused, listening. Money is not an issue. Neither is discretion. I want the best care available, and I want it yesterday. Can you do it? Another pause.
Good.
One more thing. The patient's mother will likely refuse.
She's
proud.
Stubborn.
So we do this carefully. Understood? He hung up and stared at the files on his screen. You saved my son's life, he thought. Let me save yours. It was the least he could do. It was also the most dangerous thing he'd ever attempted, because somewhere in the process of protecting Marina and her son, Vittorio Leone had started to care. And caring, in his world, was the fastest way to die. Dr. Castellano arrived at the estate 3 days later with a medical team. Vittorio had arranged everything carefully, told Marina it was a routine health screening for all staff and their families after the attack. Standard procedure. Nothing suspicious. She'd looked at him with those dark, knowing eyes but said nothing. The examination took 2 hours. Vittorio paced in his office like a caged animal, unable to focus on anything else. Finally, Dr. Castellano knocked on his door. Well,
Vittorio demanded.
The doctor, a man in his 60s who'd treated 3 generations of Leone men, set down his briefcase and sighed. The boy needs surgery.
Soon.
His left kidney is failing faster than the previous reports indicated. He has maybe 6 months, possibly less. Vittorio's hands clenched. Can you fix it? There's a procedure, a partial nephrectomy combined with regenerative therapy. It's cutting edge, expensive, and would require treatment at a facility in Geneva. The Klinik Hirslanden. They're the only ones who specialize in pediatric cases this advanced. Set it up. Vittorio, the cost. I don't care about the cost. Set it up. Dr. Castellano studied him carefully. The mother will ask questions. This isn't charity medicine. This is the kind of care that costs $500,000. Then I'll tell her the truth, that her son saved mine, and I'm repaying the debt. And if she refuses, Vittorio's jaw tightened. She won't. She's too smart to let pride kill her child. But he'd underestimated Marina's stubbornness. That evening, after Dr. Castellano had left, Marina appeared at his office door. She didn't knock, just pushed it open and stood there, arms crossed, fury written across her face.
No, she said.
Vittorio looked up from his paperwork.
No.
Whatever you're planning, whatever arrangements you've made.
No.
I won't accept it. You don't know what I'm planning. I know you talked to that doctor for an hour after he examined Elias. I know he left here making phone calls to Switzerland. I know. Her voice cracked slightly. I know you're trying to help. And I can't let you. Vittorio set down his pen carefully. Your son is dying. I know that. The words exploded from her. You think I don't know that? I count his good days like diamonds. I watch him sleep and wonder if he'll wake up. I know exactly what's happening to him, and I'm doing everything I can, which is nothing. Vittorio's voice was brutal in its honesty. What you're doing is watching him die slowly, because you're too proud to accept help from me. Marina flinched like he'd slapped her. It's not pride. It's… what? Principles?
Honor.
Vittorio stood, moving around the desk. Let me tell you about honor, Marina. There's no honor in a dead child. There's no principle worth your son's life. If you let him die because you hate me, you're no better than the people who killed your father. How dare you? I dare because I've buried people I loved. Vittorio's voice rose, years of suppressed pain breaking through. I've stood over graves of family members who died because of pride, because of honor, because of stupid, meaningless codes that matter to no one but the dead. And I won't watch another child die for the same reasons. Marina stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. You don't understand. If I take your money, if I accept this, I'm betraying my father. I'm saying that his death meant nothing, that I've forgiven you for. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Vittorio's voice dropped to almost a whisper. I don't deserve it. What I did to your family, to your father, I'd do it again tomorrow if I had to. That's who I am. That's the world we live in. Then why? Marina's voice broke. Why help us? Why save Elias when you could just let the problem disappear? It would be easier for you. Safer. Vittorio was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, he walked to the window overlooking the east garden. The fountain was lit now, water catching the moonlight. When my wife was sick, he said quietly, she made me promise something. She said, don't let this life make you forget how to be human. Don't let it turn Adrian into what you've become. I promised her. And for 2 years, I broke that promise every single day. He turned to face Marina. Then you came here. And you did what I couldn't. You gave my son back his humanity. You taught him to laugh again, to care again, to be gentle in a house full of violence. And when killers came for him, you didn't hesitate. You didn't calculate odds or think about revenge. You just acted. Anyone would have. No, Vittorio's voice was firm. Not anyone. Not in this world. Most people would have saved themselves. You saved my son. Marina wiped her eyes, still shaking her head. I can't take Mafia money. I can't. It's not Mafia money. Vittorio pulled an envelope from his desk drawer and handed it to her. It's payment for services rendered. Hazard pay.
Combat bonus.
Call it whatever you want. But you fought for my son, you bled for him, and you nearly died for him. That earns compensation. Marina opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $600,000. She actually laughed, a broken, desperate sound. This is insane. This is market rate for saving the life of a Mafia heir, Vittorio said. Actually, it's on the low end. I'm being frugal. I can't. You can, Vittorio's voice hardened. And you will. Because in 3 days, you and Elias are getting on a plane to Geneva. My security team will accompany you. You'll stay in a private apartment near the clinic. The surgery will happen within a week. You'll remain there for recovery. 2 months, maybe 3. And when you come back, your son will be healthy. Marina stared at him, the check trembling in her hands. And what do you get out of this? What's the price? Because men like you don't give without taking. The accusation stung because it was fair. I get peace, Vittorio said finally. I get to sleep at night, knowing I kept my promise to my wife. I get to look my son in the eye and not see disappointment. That's what I get. That's all. No, Vittorio met her eyes. I also get to prove to myself that I'm not completely lost. That I can still do one decent thing before I die. Is that enough of an answer? Marina looked down at the check, then at Vittorio, then back at the check. Her hands shook. Tears fell on the paper, smudging the ink slightly. If I accept this, she whispered, I'm not forgiving you. I'm not saying we're even or that what you did was okay. I'm just I'm just saving my son. I know. And when we come back, if we come back, things don't change. I'm still just your maid. This doesn't make us family or friends or... I know, Vittorio repeated gently. Marina folded the check with trembling fingers and put it in her pocket. 3 days. 3 days. I'll have arrangements finalized by tomorrow. She nodded, not trusting her voice. She turned to leave, got to the door, then stopped. Mr. Leone? Yes. Thank you. The words were barely audible. For my son. Thank you. She left before Vittorio could respond. He stood alone in his office, staring at the empty doorway, feeling something shift in his chest, something that had been frozen for years beginning to thaw. It hurt. God, it hurt. But maybe, he thought, maybe that meant he was still human after all. Outside, in the servants' quarters, Marina sat on her bed and called Elias in from where he'd been reading with Adrian in the next room. Baby, she said, pulling him onto her lap even though he was getting too big for it. How would you like to go on an airplane? Elias's eyes went wide. Really? Where? Switzerland. To see special doctors who are going to make you all better. And then I won't be sick anymore? Marina kissed his forehead, her tears falling into his hair. And then you won't be sick anymore. Can Adrian come visit? Marina laughed through her tears. Maybe someday, baby. Maybe someday. That night, for the first time in 8 years, Marina Castellano slept without fear. And in his office, Vittorio Leone poured himself that bourbon, raised it to the portrait of his wife on the wall, and whispered, I'm trying, Angela. I'm trying. The glass was empty by dawn. The private jet left from a small airfield in Westchester County at 6 a.m. on a gray Thursday morning. Marina had never been on a plane before, let alone a private one. She sat rigid in the leather seat, clutching Elias's hand, while 2 of Vittorio's men, Marcus and a younger guard named Tony, sat across the aisle. Vittorio had come to see them off, standing on the tarmac in his black coat like a general sending troops to war. The apartment is already prepared, he'd told Marina, handing her a phone. This has 1 number programmed.
Mine.
You call if there's any problem. Any problem at all. We'll be fine, Marina had said, but her voice shook. Vittorio had knelt down to Elias's level. The boy looked small in his borrowed winter coat, eyes wide with nervousness and excitement. You're going to be brave, right?
Vittorio asked.
Elias nodded solemnly. Adrian says brave people do things even when they're scared. Something flickered across Vittorio's face. Pride, maybe, or pain. Your friend is right. You tell those doctors in Geneva that you're braver than all of them combined. Will Adrian be okay while I'm gone? The question caught Vittorio off guard. Here was this child, facing surgery in a foreign country, worried about his friend. I'll take care of him, Vittorio promised. You focus on getting better, so you can come back and beat him at whatever game you 2 are playing. Now, 30,000 feet over the Atlantic, Marina watched Elias sleep against the window and tried not to think about all the ways this could go wrong. He'll be okay, ma'am, Marcus said quietly. Klinik Hirslanden is the best in the world. Boss doesn't do anything halfway. Marina nodded but didn't answer. She was thinking about the check in her purse, deposited now, converted to wire transfers that would pay for everything. Blood money. Salvation money. She didn't know which it was anymore. Geneva was cold and impossibly clean. The apartment Vittorio had arranged was in the Os Vives district, overlooking the lake. 3 bedrooms, fully furnished, stocked with food. A prison that felt like paradise. The first appointment was the next morning. Dr. Henri Beaumont, head of pediatric nephrology, examined Elias with gentle efficiency while Marina translated questions and held her son's hand. After an hour of tests, Dr. Beaumont sat down with Marina in his office, his English crisp and only slightly accented. The diagnosis is accurate: advanced kidney disease, possibly genetic in origin. The good news is we caught it before complete failure. The procedure will perform is complex, but has an 85% success rate in cases like your son's. And the 15%. Marina's voice was steady despite her terror. Complications are possible. Rejection, infection, excessive bleeding. But Mrs. Castellano, I must be honest, without this surgery, your son has less than 6 months. With it, he has a normal lifespan. The choice is stark. Marina closed her eyes. When? We can schedule for next week. I want to run more tests first, build up his strength. He's underweight, anemic. We need to optimize his condition before we operate. The week passed in a blur of medical tests and waiting. Marina barely slept, watching Elias around the clock. Marcus and Tony took shifts guarding the apartment, but they were kind about it, bringing pastries, teaching Elias card games, never making them feel like prisoners. On the third day, the phone Vittorio had given her rang. How is he? Vittorio's voice was rough, like he hadn't slept either. Scared.
Brave.
He asks about Adrian every day. Adrian asks about him too. Constantly. He's driving the staff crazy, wanting to know when Elias is coming back. Marina felt tears prick her eyes. Tell him soon. Tell him Elias is getting stronger.
Marina Vittorio paused.
Are you okay? The question was so unexpected, so genuinely concerned, that Marina's carefully constructed walls crumbled. No, she whispered.
I'm terrified.
What if something goes wrong? What if I lose him? He's all I have and He won't die. Vittorio's voice was absolute, commanding. I won't allow it. You can't control this. Watch me. The sheer arrogance of it should have been offensive. Instead, it was oddly comforting. That boy is coming home healthy. End of discussion. Marina laughed through her tears. You're insane. Probably. But I keep my promises. The surgery was scheduled for Tuesday, November 18th, at 7 a.m. Marina wasn't allowed in the operating room. She sat in a private waiting area for 6 hours while surgeons opened her son's body and tried to save his life. Marcus sat with her the entire time, silent but present. She was grateful for that, grateful she wasn't alone. At 1:47 p.m., Dr. Beaumont emerged, still in surgical scrubs. Marina stood so fast she nearly fell. Is he? The surgery was successful, Dr. Beaumont smiled, genuine and warm. We removed the diseased portion of the kidney, performed the regenerative grafting, and everything took beautifully. Your son is in recovery. He'll be sedated for several hours, but his vitals are strong. Marina's legs gave out. Marcus caught her, lowering her back into the chair. He's okay, she gasped. He's really okay. He has a long recovery ahead, 6 to 8 weeks here, then months of careful monitoring. But yes, Mrs. Castellano, your son is going to live a normal, healthy life. Marina put her face in her hands and sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that came from somewhere deep and primal. Marcus awkwardly patted her shoulder, clearly uncomfortable but trying to help. You want me to call the boss? He asked. Marina nodded, unable to speak. Marcus stepped away, dialing. Marina heard his quiet voice. Boss? The kid made it. Surgery was successful. Yeah, she's pretty shook up. Okay, I'll tell her. He returned, crouching down. Boss says to tell you well done. Says you're tougher than half his soldiers. Marina laughed and cried at the same time. Tell him thank you. For everything. They let her see Elias 2 hours later. He looked so small in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines and tubes. But his chest rose and fell steadily, his face peaceful. Marina sat beside him and took his hand. You did it, baby, she whispered. You were so brave. You're going to be okay now. She stayed there all night, watching him breathe, barely believing this was real. The next morning, Elias woke up. His first words were, Can I call Adrian? Marina laughed, exhausted and relieved. Soon, baby.
Soon.
Recovery was slow. Some days Elias felt strong, wanting to play despite his incision. Other days he was weak, nauseous from medications. But every day, he got a little better. Marcus video called the estate daily so Elias could talk to Adrian. The boys would chat for hours about books, about games, about everything and nothing. And every night, after Elias fell asleep, Marina would call Vittorio and report the day's progress. Their conversations grew longer, started including other topics, how Adrian was doing, estate security improvements, even small jokes. The boundaries between employer and employee, between enemies and whatever they were becoming, began to blur. "When are you coming home?" Vittorio asked one night, 6 weeks into their stay. Dr. Beaumont says another month. Maybe less if Elias's numbers keep improving. Adrian's counting the days. Just Adrian? Silence on the line. Then, quietly, "No, not just Adrian." Marina's breath caught. "Mr. Leone."
Vittorio.
"You can call me Vittorio." "I don't think. You've been in my house for almost a year. Your son and mine are brothers in everything but blood. You nearly died protecting my heir. I think we're past formalities, don't you?" Marina closed her eyes, feeling the ground shift beneath her. "When we come back, things will be different." "I know. I don't know if that's good or bad." "Neither do I," Vittorio admitted. "But I'm tired of being alone in this house, Marina. And I think you're tired of running." She didn't answer, couldn't answer, because he was right. 2 weeks later, Dr. Beaumont cleared Elias for travel. The wound had healed beautifully. His blood work was normal. The kidney was functioning perfectly. "Your son is a fighter," Dr. Beaumont told Marina. "He has a strong spirit. He learned from the best," Marina said, thinking of her father, despite everything. The flight home was different. Elias was animated, excited, talking nonstop about seeing Adrian. Marina was quiet, staring out at clouds, wondering what they were returning to. Marcus noticed. "Boss has changed, you know."
Since you left.
"He smiles sometimes. Talks to the boy more. It's weird, but good weird." Marina looked at him. "What are you saying?" Marcus shrugged. "Just that maybe this family needed you more than any of us knew, including the boss." The estate appeared through the car windows at sunset, golden light making it look almost welcoming. And standing on the front steps, waiting, were Vittorio and Adrian. The car barely stopped before Elias threw open the door and ran, doctor's orders forgotten, straight to Adrian. The boys collided in a hug that made both of them laugh. Marina got out more slowly, suddenly nervous. Vittorio walked down the steps toward her. He looked different, less severe, more human. Older maybe, but softer too. "Welcome home," he said. And for the first time, Marina realized he meant it. The first week back was strange, careful. Marina returned to her duties, but everything felt different. The other staff treated her with new respect, or was it wariness? She wasn't sure. They knew she'd killed for the boss's son, that she'd been sent to Geneva on Leone money, that she was somehow different now. Elias recovered quickly, his energy returning in leaps and bounds. He and Adrian were inseparable, spending every afternoon in the gardens, making up for lost time. The estate felt lighter with their laughter, like sunshine breaking through years of clouds. But Vittorio watched from his office window, with growing concern. Adrian was different too, clingier, more anxious. He'd wake from nightmares screaming, something he hadn't done since the attack. And when he did, he didn't call for his father. He called for Marina. The third time it happened, at 2 a.m. on a Saturday, Vittorio stood outside Adrian's room listening to Marina's soft voice through the door. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're safe. I'm right here." "But what if they come back?" Adrian's voice was small, broken. "What if next time you're not here? What if they hurt Elias or? She'll listen to me." Marina's voice was firm, but gentle. "Your father has made this place safer than Fort Knox. There are new guards, new cameras, new everything. No one is getting to you. I promise." "You can't promise that. Bad things happen even when you try to stop them." Silence. Then, "You're right. I can't promise nothing bad will ever happen. But I can promise that I will always fight for you. Always. Do you believe me? Yes, a pause. Ms. Marina?
Can you stay?
Just until I fall asleep. Of course. Vittorio heard the bed creak as Marina settled in. She started humming something soft and sad, a lullaby maybe, or an old song. Within minutes, Adrian's breathing evened out. Vittorio stood in the hallway for another 20 minutes, waiting. Finally, the door opened softly. Marina stepped out and froze when she saw him. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know I shouldn't be in the family wing at night, but he was so scared, and I thought. How often does this happen?
Marina hesitated.
The nightmares? 3 or 4 times a week since we got back. And you sit with him every time? Yes, her chin lifted slightly, defensive. Is that a problem? Vittorio studied her in the dim hallway light. This woman in pajamas and a robe, hair loose around her shoulders, looking exhausted but resolved. No, he said finally. It's not a problem. He turned to leave, then stopped.
Marina?
Thank you for being there for him when I don't know how to be. Before she could respond, he disappeared into his own room, closing the door softly. The next evening, Adrian appeared at Vittorio's office door. It was late, past 9 p.m., and the boy should have been in bed. He stood in the doorway in his pajamas, clutching something in his hand. Adrian? What's wrong? Can I talk to you? Something in his son's voice made Vittorio set down his papers immediately. Of course.
Come in.
Adrian entered slowly, closing the door behind him. He walked to the chair across from Vittorio's desk but didn't sit. He just stood there, struggling with something. Take your time, Vittorio said gently. I have nightmares, Adrian finally said. About the attack. About the men with guns. About Ms. Marina getting hurt. Vittorio's chest tightened. I know. I've heard you wake up. Adrian's eyes widened. You have? The walls aren't as thick as you think. Then why don't you? Adrian stopped, looking down at his feet. Why don't I come to you? Vittorio finished quietly. Because I don't know how to help. I don't know what to say to make it better. I never have. Ms. Marina does. Adrian's voice was small. She just sits with me. She doesn't try to fix it or tell me to be brave. She just stays. Each word was a knife to Vittorio's heart. Your mother was like that too. She knew how to comfort you. I never learned. Because you're always strong? Adrian looked up. Because you're the boss and bosses can't be soft. Because I'm afraid the admission came out before Vittorio could stop it. Every time I look at you, I see her. Your mother. And I remember that I failed to protect her. That all my power, all my money, all my men, none of it saved her. Adrian's eyes filled with tears. You think you failed. I know I did. But Dad, Adrian moved closer, still clutching whatever was in his hand. Mom was sick.
You couldn't stop that.
Nobody could. I should have found better doctors, better treatments. She had the best. Adrian's voice rose. She told me. She said you moved mountains for her. That you tried everything. She said he swallowed hard. She said her only regret was leaving us before teaching you how to be sad without being angry. Vittorio felt like he'd been punched.
She said that.
Adrian nodded. Right before the end. She made me promise to remember that you love me even when you don't know how to show it. That your heart is good even though you've done bad things. She made me promise not to hate you for being how you are. Adrian, Vittorio's voice broke. I miss her so much. Adrian started crying now. I miss her every single day. And I was so angry at you for not missing her the same way. For not crying or talking about her, or anything. I thought you didn't care. I cared too much. Vittorio came around the desk, kneeling in front of his son. I care so much it feels like my chest is splitting open. But I didn't know how to show you that without falling apart completely. And I thought you needed me to be strong. I needed you to be my dad. Adrian sobbed. I needed you to be sad with me, not locked away in your office pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. Vittorio pulled Adrian into his arms, and for the first time in 2 years, he let himself cry. Not the silent, private tears he'd shed in his office at night, but real sobs that shook his whole body. Adrian clung to him, both of them breaking down together in a way they should have done years ago. "I'm sorry," Vittorio choked out.
I'm so sorry.
"I failed you. I failed her. I failed to be the father you needed." "You're here now," Adrian whispered. "That's what matters. Ms. Marina says it's never too late to start over." Vittorio pulled back slightly, wiping his son's tears with his thumbs.
She's right.
"She's right about a lot of things." Adrian nodded, then held out what he'd been clutching, a small pendant on a gold chain. "Mom gave this to me before she died. She said to give it to someone who made our family whole again." Vittorio recognized it immediately, his wife's favorite necklace, simple but elegant. She'd worn it every day. "Adrian, this is yours. You should keep it." "No," Adrian's voice was certain. "Ms. Marina saved my life. She saved Elias. She brought laughter back to this house. And she taught you how to be my dad again. Mom would want her to have it." Vittorio looked at the pendant, then at his son's earnest face. "You really think of Marina as family, don't you?" The question hung in the air. Did he? This woman who had every reason to hate him, who'd stayed anyway, who'd given them both something they'd lost, hope. "Yes," Vittorio admitted. "I think I do." "Then give it to her," Adrian said, pressing the pendant into Vittorio's hand. "Tomorrow, at dinner, in front of everyone, so they know she belongs here." "Adrian, that's a very big gesture. It means she's family." Adrian's eyes were bright, intense. "It means she and Elias belong with us. That we're not just a boss and a maid anymore. We're something better, right?" Vittorio closed his hand around the pendant, feeling its weight. Making this gesture would change everything. It would signal to his entire organization that Marina Castellano, daughter of a dead enemy, was under his protection, under his family's protection. It was dangerous. Political suicide, maybe. But looking at his son's face, seeing the hope and happiness there, Vittorio realized he didn't care. "Right," he said quietly. "We're something better." Adrian threw his arms around Vittorio's neck.
Thank you, Dad.
"For letting them stay. For helping Elias.
For
being here now." "Thank you," Vittorio whispered back, "for not giving up on me." They stayed like that for a long time, father and son, finally grieving together, finally healing together. And in his hand, the pendant seemed to grow warm, as if his wife was somehow smiling down on them, proud that they'd finally found their way back to each other. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, they were just a father and son learning how to be family again. The dining room had never been used for anything but solitary, silent meals. Tonight, for the first time in 2 years, it was alive. Vittorio had given explicit instructions. Full staff dinner, no exceptions. Elena had nearly fainted when she received the order. The boss wanted everyone, housekeepers, guards, kitchen staff, groundskeepers, and their families, gathered at the long table that could seat 30. "Is this a firing?" Marcus had asked nervously. "No," Vittorio said. "It's a beginning." By 7 p.m., the dining room was full. Staff sat stiffly in their best clothes, unsure what was happening. Marina sat near the middle, Elias beside her, both looking equally confused. Adrian sat at Vittorio's right hand, barely containing his excitement. Vittorio stood, and the room fell silent. "I'm not good at speeches," he began. "I'm better at threats and negotiations. But tonight isn't about business. It's about family." Confused glances were exchanged around the table. 2 years ago, I lost my wife. In my grief, I turned this house into a tomb. I thought strength meant isolation. I thought protection meant walls. He looked at Adrian. I was wrong. Adrian smiled encouragingly. Then 6 months ago, a woman came here looking for work. She needed money, needed a chance, needed a place where her son could be safe. I hired her because she was qualified. I kept her because he paused, looking at Marina. Because she reminded me what I'd forgotten, that a house full of people can still be empty if there's no heart in it. Marina's eyes widened, understanding dawning. 3 weeks ago, killers came for my son. They came because someone I trusted betrayed us. And when they came, this woman, Vittorio gestured to Marina, didn't run, didn't hide. She stood between armed men and 2 children who weren't even both hers. She fought with a kitchen knife against trained killers. She nearly died protecting my heir. The room was completely silent now. Even the kitchen staff had stopped moving. I sent her to Geneva with her son because he was sick. Dying, actually. And no one in this country would help him because of who his grandfather was. Because of what I did to his family, Vittorio's voice hardened. I destroyed the DeMarcos. I burned their operations to the ground. And Marina's father died in that warehouse fire. Gasps around the table. Marina's face went pale. She'd known people suspected, but hearing it said aloud, in front of everyone. She had every reason to hate me, Vittorio continued. Every reason to let my son die. Every reason to poison our food or sell our secrets or disappear in the night. Instead, she gave Adrian back his childhood. She taught him to laugh again, to trust again, to be kind in a world that's forgotten kindness. He picked up a small box from beside his plate. Inside was his wife's pendant, polished until it gleamed. My wife Angela believed that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when everything falls apart. The people who stay when leaving would be easier. The people who love you despite knowing exactly who you are. Vittorio walked around the table to where Marina sat. She looked up at him, tears already streaming down her face. Marina Castellano, you saved my son's life. But more than that, you saved mine. You showed me that I could still be human. That this house could still be a home. That my boy could still have a childhood worth living. He opened the box, showing her the pendant. This belonged to my wife. She wore it every day. Adrian believes she would want you to have it. And I agree. Mr. Leone, I can't. Marina's voice broke. You can. And you will, Vittorio's voice softened. Because you're not just my employee anymore. You're family. You and Elias both. This pendant means you're under Leone protection. It means you belong here. It means... He stopped, struggling with emotions he'd suppressed for so long. Adrian jumped up from his seat. It means you're our family now. You and Elias. Forever. Elias looked at Adrian with wide eyes. Really? We get to stay? Forever and ever, Adrian promised, grabbing his friend's hand. Marina stood on shaking legs. I don't deserve this. After everything. After who my father was. Your father's sins aren't yours to carry, Vittorio said firmly. And my sins aren't Adrian's. Our children deserve better than our war. They deserve to grow up as brothers, in a house where they're loved and protected. Don't they? Marina looked at Elias, then at Adrian. These 2 boys who'd found each other in the darkness and become each other's light. She thought about the months of running, hiding, surviving. She thought about her father, about the warehouse, about all the pain that had brought her here. And she thought about Adrian's laughter in the garden. About Elias sleeping peacefully for the first time in years. About a Mafia boss who'd cried in front of his son and admitted he was wrong. Yes, she whispered. They do. Vittorio carefully fastened the pendant around her neck. His hands shook slightly, the first time anyone had ever seen Vittorio Leone's hands shake. Welcome home, Marina, he said quietly, so only she could hear. I know I can't undo the past. Can't bring back your father or erase what I've done. But I can give you this, a place where you and your son are safe. Where you're valued. Where you belong. If you'll accept it. Marina touched the pendant, feeling its weight. On one condition. Vittorio raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating? I learned from the best, a small smile. The boys, they can't grow up in this life. The violence, the wars, the fear. If we're family now, really family, then we break the cycle. We give them something different. Vittorio was quiet for a long moment. Around the table, staff held their breath. Agreed, he said finally. I've been arranging things. Setting up legitimate businesses, distance from operations. It'll take time, but yes, they deserve different. He turned to address the room. You all heard her. This house is changing. We're not just surviving anymore. We're building something worth protecting. A real home. A real family. Anyone who can't handle that can leave with full severance and references. No hard feelings. No one moved. Elena stood, tears streaming down her face. To the family, she said, raising her glass. To the family, the room echoed. The dinner that followed was chaotic, joyful, loud. Staff who'd been silent and afraid for years suddenly talked and laughed. Children played between the chairs. Adrian and Elias led a group of younger kids in some game that made no sense but involved a lot of running and shouting. Vittorio watched it all from his seat, drinking bourbon and feeling something he thought was dead, contentment. Marina sat beside him now, at his invitation. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. For Elias, for this, for… Don't, Vittorio interrupted gently. Don't thank me. Not after everything I took from you.
Just stay.
Build a life here. Let our sons be brothers. That's thanks enough. They already are brothers, Marina observed, watching Adrian and Elias attempt to juggle bread rolls. Then I guess that makes us family too, Vittorio said. Marina looked at him, really looked at him. Saw not the monster who'd killed her father, not the boss who'd terrified her, but a man who'd lost his way and found it again through the laughter of children. I guess it does, she agreed. Later, after the staff had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Vittorio found Adrian and Elias asleep in the garden. They'd snuck out after dinner, were curled up together on Marina's blanket under the stars. Marina appeared beside him. I'll carry Elias in. I'll get Adrian. They each lifted a boy, these children who'd been through too much, who'd found each other when the world was dark, who'd somehow healed two broken adults in the process. Walking back to the house together, children in their arms, Marina whispered, Your wife would be proud. Of Adrian. Of this. Of you. She'd be prouder of you, Vittorio replied, for having the courage to trust again after everything. They put the boys to bed. Adrian in his room, Elias in his new room next door, bigger, brighter, with proper furniture and toys. As they stood in the hallway between the two rooms, Marina touched the pendant at her throat. I won't forget what happened, she said. I can't. I'm not asking you to forget. Just to let's try to do better. To be better.
Marina nodded.
For them. For them, Vittorio agreed. And maybe, eventually for us too. She smiled, tentative but real. Maybe. In the morning, Adrian woke to find his father in the kitchen making pancakes. Badly, but making them. Dad, what are you doing? Trying to be present, Vittorio said, flipping a pancake that landed half on the floor. Your mother tried to teach me once. I never paid attention. Figured I'd try again. Adrian laughed, that bright, genuine sound that had been missing for so long. Can I help?
Please.
Before I burn the house down. They cooked together, making a mess, laughing when things went wrong. When Marina and Elias appeared, drawn by the smell of burning batter and the sound of joy, they found father and son covered in flour, grinning at each other. Room for two more? Marina asked. Always, Vittorio said. And for the first time in 2 years, the House of Leon stopped being a fortress and became a home. Not perfect, never perfect. The past couldn't be erased, and the world outside was still dangerous. But inside these walls, 2 boys laughed and played. A woman who'd lost everything found family again, and a man who'd forgotten how to be human remembered. The pendant around Marina's neck caught the morning light, and somewhere, somehow, Angela Leone smiled. The cycle was broken. The family was whole. And love, impossible, unexpected, hard-won love had finally found its way home.
The end.